Well, good afternoon. My name is Mike Ellzey. I am currently serving at the Nixon Library, Presidential Library up in Yorba Linda. I served as a U.S. Marine in the Marine Corps between 1970 and 1976. I was in the Marines during the Vietnam War era and was in the Marines at the conclusion of America's involvement in the Vietnam War through the Paris Peace Accords in January of 1973. So I'm going to read my statement. There we were, the three of us standing in the driveway on the morning of April 1st, 1971, crying together for the first time that I could remember. Mom and Dad were saying their goodbyes to their 19-year-old son as he prepared to depart from San Jose to Oakland to process into the U.S. Marine Corps and begin the journey of a lifetime. After a long day and for the first of many oaths of office I've sworn to the United States over the course of my career, we arrived at MCRD San Diego at around 10:30 p.m. The incredibly loud and mean Marine in a great-looking uniform with an odd-shaped hat boarded and barked for us to get off the bus and stand on the yellow footprints. At that moment, just hours removed from the teenage civilian life I was innocently enjoying, my transition from the abstract of joining the Marines to the reality of being in the Marines became complete. We stood on the yellow footprints and individually proceeded to walk through a small door where four barbers were stationed side by side, running the buzzer over the heads of each recruit, leaving every one of us bald. It was quick and mechanical. There were no scissors anywhere. From there, we moved through the next door, and for several hours, we further transitioned from civilians to recruits. Not for some time we were told would we become Marines. We received our initial issue: socks, shoes, boots, uniforms, underwear, and of course, a rifle. We boxed up and shipped out of our civilian clothes and everything that tied us to home. We donned our uniforms, and for the first time, all 60 of us looked the same, bald and in ill-fitting fatigues, the beginning of a unit. This process took all night. At 4:30 in the morning, we marched to the chow hall for breakfast. From there, we were marched to a classroom where we received an orientation and spent much of the day taking aptitude tests. None of us knew at the time, but our performance on these tests, taken without the benefit of a night's sleep, would play a role in what we would do and where we would be assigned after boot camp and infantry training. I did well in the testing, graduated as a squad leader of Platoon 2039, earned a meritorious promotion to PFC at a boot camp, and was one of 4 out of 200 new Marine graduates to be invited to serve on the company's honor guard at the graduation ceremonies. After infantry training at Camp Pendleton, I was assigned to clerical school and then legal school. I became a legal clerk. In November 1971, I was assigned to my permanent duty station, Casualty Company, Marine Barracks, Treasure Island, San Francisco, a very active processing station and regional courts-martial headquarters during the Vietnam War. As a legal clerk at Casualty Company, I reported to Gunnery Sergeant Plunkett, a tough woman Marine who doubled as the staff non-commissioned officer in charge of the 30 or so members of the Woman Marine Detachment stationed at Treasure Island, performing administrative support to a very busy operation. In my role as legal clerk, I was responsible for preparing Article 15's non-judicial punishment for barracks staff or Marines being processed from AWOL or for other non-criminal charges, providing support for the barracks legal office in the courts-martial process, processing prisoners who had committed transgressions within the region or who were AWOL from their units, often from Vietnam, escorting prisoners back to their unit by van or airplane, participating in or supervising a large number of burials of deceased Marines with full military honors. And finally, in a fluke and consequential assignment that went a long way toward defining my service as a U.S. Marine, overseeing the dignified transfer of the remains of a fallen Marine. I enjoyed the experience in the legal office at Treasure Island because I had an interest in law and law enforcement, and the operation was a professional outfit led by legal officer, First Lieutenant Smizer, an infantry officer freshly stateside from Vietnam. Lieutenant Schmeiser changed my life. He treated me with respect. He appreciated my work and encouraged me to pursue my college degree through night school as much as possible. By discharge, I had earned 30 units of college credits at night school. And I contribute this accomplishment in large part to the consistent encouragement I received from leadership at Marine Barracks Treasure Island. Our adjutant at the barracks, the administrative support officer to the commanding officer, was Captain Bishop. He was a good man. One day in early February 1973, Captain Bishop summoned me to his office. He looked me over and promptly uttered the words that would breathe life into the memories of my service as a Marine and would form the foundation for a lifelong interest in military memorial affairs and a career in public service. Lance Corporal Ellzey, you are being assigned to escort the body of PFC Mark J. Miller, who is from the San Francisco Bay Area and falls under our jurisdiction. PFC Miller was the last Marine killed in Vietnam before last week's Paris Peace Accords went into effect. Captain Bishop explained in no uncertain terms that this was a big deal with heavy political overtones and high expectations, and he thought I was the best Marine under his command for the job. I had no idea upon hearing these words the momentous occasion he was describing. The briefing was a blur. Somehow I requisitioned a military van and drove to San Francisco International Airport, at times blending among the Marines, the visiting Washington, D.C. dignitaries. I made my way to the plane for deboarding, stood at attention, and was a good Marine. I met the escort from Dover and assumed responsibility for the dignified transfer of PFC Miller's remains. PFC Mark J. Miller was born on April 1st, 1952, 19 years to the day before I joined the Marines in 1971, and began the journey that would lead to this solemn occasion and become so meaningful in my life. I escorted PFC Miller's body to the funeral home and stood by his remains from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. for 2 days. I then escorted PFC Miller to the Golden Gate National Cemetery and for a time deferred to the ceremonial proceedings befitting the last Marine killed during America's involvement in Vietnam War. I resumed control of the dignified transfer and led the burial detail as I had on many occasions for other Marines before this one, and I oversaw full military honors as PFC Miller was laid to rest. I became acquainted with PFC Miller's family. His mother was so gracious and appreciative, and I was invited to attend a celebration of PFC Miller's life later that evening. While there, I learned only as they roared up to the gathering that PFC Miller's brother was a member of a motorcycle gang. It may have been the Hells Angels, I don't recall. I was on edge, to say the least, not knowing whether this big brother would blame the Marine Corps and therefore me for his younger brother's death. Remember, this was 1973. As it turned out, he was, as was his entire family, deeply appreciative that I looked after his brother's remains so respectfully and professionally. It meant the world to him and to me. His sister was very kind to me also, and they stayed in touch for some time after her brother's burial. These became the memories of a lifetime. And now, nearly 50 years later, PFC Miller's status as the last Marine killed in Vietnam before the Paris Peace Accords went into effect is featured prominently in the renovated permanent galleries at the Richard Nixon Presidential Library and Museum, along with the last fallen service members from each of the service branches. Richard Nixon was, of course, PFC Miller's and my commander-in-chief at the time of the Paris Peace Accords. His letter to PFC Miller's mother on the occasion of his death by combat fire is included in the library's textual collection. Since 2015, I have served as the director of the Nixon Presidential Library. Escorting PFC Miller to his final resting place in the Golden Gate National Cemetery in 1973 is my most enduring military experience, and the exhibit on display at the Nixon Library of PFC Miller and the last fallen military heroes killed in Vietnam represents a full circle in my life.